Now, dare I say that the 1989 Batman movie spurred the increase in not just the number of superhero cartoons for the 90s, but added the effort to make them less kiddie fair. So that's why I want to talk about the 90s superhero cartoons. Welcome to my channel, KC. That's me, Carrie Chug, the Sledge Storyteller, here to talk about storytelling, and my focus now is how well stories were told in 90s cartoons. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe, and while you're at it, please click the notification button. Thank you. Now, if you've been watching these videos about superhero cartoons through the decades, I had rules. The same rules apply here. No teams of robots, no sword and sorcery, no special paramilitary forces, and no anthropomorphic animal types. Now, I won't be doing these in chronological order. Just let's start with Spider-Man, that started in 1994, ended in 1998 by Marvel Studios and also Saban Animation. But behind the scenes, this series was Marvel's flagship show during the 90s, but it was notable for its serialized storytelling and faithful adaptation of major comic arcs. The budget constraints limited the frame
now there are two goblins? And what does this one want with
use assets, but story ambition made up for it. Abe Arad ensured that the story stayed toyetic and appealing to networks. The censorship of the time was pretty strict, and Spider-Man, he couldn't throw punches at anybody, and terms like kill or die were banned. But for all those limitations, I have to say this is the most fluid I've ever seen Spider-Man move in a cartoon. And the high-paced web slinging, all the web swinging, the acrobatics, punches and kicks, the kind of emotions Spider-Man's expected to convey, the extensive use of spider villains, it raised the stakes and created the need for peril. But overall, it was plenty fun and effective. I will say, when it comes to the villains, they took full advantage of the newly added Venom, and it showcased Peter Parker and his alter ego very effectively. Then we have Spider-Man Unlimited, also Marvel Entertainment and Saban along with them. But, there was a spiritual sequel to the 94 series, and it was created when rights issues prevented them from adapting the Spider-Man 2099 series. But, writers, they pivoted to a sci-fi setting on Counter-Earth. Fox, they ordered a darker, serialized tone, and it was a nice touch putting Spider-Man in an underground team of heroes working to subvert the oppressive regime of High Evolutionary and his band of bestials of Counter-Earth, while also having to fight Venom and Carnage. With J. Jonah Jameson's astronaut son John in the Heroic Alliance. And I was glad to see the series implement his man-wolf persona in the mix. Too bad the show was canceled after one season due to low ratings, and competing with Pokemon and Digimon, it ended on a cliffhanger, so a lot of people didn't receive a satisfactory ending. It was a fun way to give Spider-Man a fresh coat of paint with its different setting, and it's worth a look on Disney+. So here I'm combining dialogue, talking about both Fantastic Four and Iron Man for the years of 1994-96. I'll explain later, but for the record, I never saw a single episode of either series during their initial runs, so I took advantage of my Disney Plus to get caught up. We'll agree that they should be covered together, just because they shared the same creative teams working simultaneously on them. Firstly, Ron Friedman, who had initially earned his stripes from Marvel as a writer for the G1 Transformers series, which I have much nostalgia for, minus the 1986 movie, which Friedman did write, but the whole plot-based genocide on both the Autobot and Decepticon sides, including Optimus Prime, was forced on Friedman by his higher-ups, so I'm not going to blame him for that. But now that's out of the way, his Midas touch on the Transformers did not transition to these two series. The first season of each are notorious for being poorly animated with clunky dialogue and overall campy tone. When I started watching the Fantastic Four pilot as anticipated, it went over the Fantastic Four's origin stories, and now I would expect that they would want to avoid making it a paint-by-numbers rendition of the story, but the framing device of a telethon hosted by the Four and Dick Clark, I don't know if it's the premise itself or the corny dialogue, but it's a painful watch. Much of the same with Iron Man. Every villain scene during the first season, it feels like a stage for them to monologue with such villains as the Mandarin, Dread Knight, and MODOK. And it's much the same when the heroes are in the same room talking. Same corny dialogue between Tony Stark, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, and Jim Rhodes, War Machine, and Scarlet Witch. And so this talk about the flaws of the season 1, yeah, that means that things got better in season 2. Both series saw a complete overhaul of writers who found the right ideas of what would work for the remainder of the series. The Fantastic Four made it work as the comics had historically done in implementing guest star heroes such as Thor, Black Panther, Silver Surfer, which of course meant bringing Galactus in as a villain. Iron Man brought in episodes that added well-depicted conflict, such as Tony Stark being confronted by a clone of his father, and well-crafted stories pitting him against the Russian Crimson Dynamo. So overall, quench your curiosity with a few of the bad episodes from season 1, then have fun with all of season 2. Move on to The Incredible Hulk that ran from 96 to 97 under Marvel Studios animation, and this show embraced a darker, more tragic tone. True to the comics, Lou Ferrigno voiced the Hulk, and connecting it to the live action series, it experimented with dual Hulk personalities like Green and Gray and tackled mature themes. Despite strong creative direction, ABC canceled it after 2 seasons due to the declining toy sales of all things and the ratings. Having loved the early 80s cartoons, I was excited to watch it, and it was a bonus to me that Lou Ferrigno was voicing the Hulk, and there was a lot I loved about it. What I didn't love was when they dipped into the Grey Hulk part of the lore, because I mainly wanted to stay at the basic early 80s lore, but this was how things were done with the Hulk in the comics, so devoted fans were probably expecting that. Bruce Banner hulks out when his emotions run high and fights against the opposition. I saw, in the first couple episodes especially, I loved the episode involving the idealistic conflict between Banner and Thunderbolt Ross, mixed with the Hulk's scraps with Wendigo. And while the tried and true crossover with the Thing worked, the crossover episodes with Iron Man and Ghost Rider, they always felt shoehorned and didn't work beyond fan service. But overall, I think there are enough episodes that are just plain fun that you should have a look at this. So then we have Avengers United They Stand. It ran 99 through 2000, so just 1 season. Saban Entertainment teamed again with Marvel Entertainment. The Avengers, they were relatively unknown to the mainstream audiences pre-MCU. The roster here omitted Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, and instead it focused on secondary members like Ant-Man and Wasp. The designs, they leaned into robotic armor and 90's trends. I kept reading issues of the again defunct Wizard magazine about attempts at movie projects of Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America in limbo, and perhaps that's the kind of thing that was keeping them out of this due to licensing. And the fact that they were missing those heavy hitters that I was hoping to see, I wasn't alone in being disappointed over their absence, because it was canceled after just 1 season. Then we have X-Men, the animated series that started in 1992 and ran through 1997. Again, Saban Entertainment. but they teamed with Graz Entertainment. It was developed by Margaret Lesh and Eric Lewald. The storytelling was groundbreaking for its serialized storytelling and mature themes. It also had direct comic arcs like Phoenix Saga. The animation was kind of uneven at times because it was outsourced globally, and production was chaotic, but episodes often aired out of order. But the writing made it a hit and helped spark Marvel's 1990s renaissance. The creative talent had a masterful handle on X-Men and somehow knew how to use the lore to nail it with Marvel fans, as well as attracting fans who had no idea who the X-Men were, and it ran for 5 seasons again. Speaking for myself, my exposure to them began with their guest star appearances on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I mentioned that in my 80s superhero video. So I readily recognized Professor X, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Colossus, but by the general public standards, I was ahead of the game. I got a charge out of Wolverine's hot temper, he was looking for a fight, that swagger, and I loved this iteration of Beast as the hulking, agile, and super intelligent fighting force. It also effectively ran the coming-of-age story well for Jubilee. Magneto's determination to see Homo Superior dominate the world, and Sabretooth's existential conflicts, they've rounded things out with a lot of substance in this series. So if you have Disney Plus, take full advantage of this series. Silver Surfer had his cameos in that Fantastic Four series. Marvel decided to take a chance in 1998, so they and Saban Entertainment. It ran for 1 season, but it was visually ambitious and had a total cosmic saga of Norrin Radd, who becomes the Herald of Galaxus to save his homeworld, Zenla. Betrayed and cursed to roam space alone, he searches for meaningful justice and peace across the universe. It adapted Jack Kirby's philosophy and tone, often tackling deep themes like war, oppression, and cosmic morality. In this series, they made full use of Galactus, Thanos, Ego, the Living Planet, and the Watcher to the full degree of, Kirby's philosophical edge. They seem to be in touch with Kirby himself. And I had to play catch up again with this series as well. This all had the marks of the time of CG experimentation, new as CG was at that time. It looked great on Galactus, the backgrounds, and the spacecraft. The animation fluidity suffered a little from it, but the stories had high stakes, many moral dilemmas, and deep dives into the meaning of heroism. Captain Planet and the Planeteers, running from 1990 through 1996, Turner Entertainment, along with Deke Animation and Hanna-Barbera, they were behind all that. And, Ted Turner, he wanted to promote an environmental message, bring the awareness to the general public. The show combined action with eco-activism, while critics, they mocked its on-the-nose messaging. It was groundbreaking for tackling pollution, racism, even HIV and AIDS. The voice cast included LeVar Burton and Whoopi Goldberg. The budget restrictions often limited animation quality and looked choppy at times. I can't argue with the noble intentions behind the creation of the series, and watching it, I always wanted the protagonists to win against the villains, who were both greedy and they seem to gleefully know that they are polluting the environment. Still, the design and power factor of Captain Planet, I thought that came together well and was well implemented, so it's fun enough to watch, if not here and there. So here I'm clustering the Image cartoons. Now, nobody passes comic book history 101 without knowing the story of a whole lineup of Marvel artists who in 1992 up and defected to form their own publishing group, Image, with each of them running their own imprint. During that same decade, 3 Image-based cartoons came on TV. Eric Larson got his Savage Dragon cartoon in 1995 about a green-skinned, thin-headed powerhouse with amnesia who wakes up in a burning field in Chicago with no memory of his past. He is discovered by Lieutenant Frank Darling. The Dragon agrees to join Chicago Police Department to help combat the city's out-of-control supervillain population. Jim Lee, he got his Wildcats on the air from 1994 through 1995. The Wildcats are assembled by a mysterious billionaire named Jacob Marlowe, who is secretly a cherubim lord. The team is made up of both humans and cherubim hybrids, chosen for their powers and dedication to stop the Daemonite threat. Now, in both these cases, Savage Dragon and Wildcats, their creators were dissatisfied with what came out, with how much censorship they had to go through before they aired. On the other hand, running from 1997 through 1999, Todd McFarlane, he got to get his Spawn on HBO, which gave him carte blanche to make it how he wanted. And with dark visuals, brooding tone, and Keith David's iconic voice, it was a critical success. Just some behind-the-scenes difficulties led to its early cancellation. But, they are part of the 90s superhero cartoon archive. But also in 1995, Deke Animation, they aired Ultra Force. It was based on the Malibu Comics superhero team. And the show was meant to compete with X-Men. And no surprise, Marvel, they acquired Malibu in this series. And the universe, they were quietly phased out. When I brought it up on Tubi, it was an agonizing watch with choppy animation, plot glitches, and confusing character development. Basically, what had become of Deke Animation because of sloppy management. It's on Tubi. Have a look. You've just been warned. Now, few would argue against the notion that the standard bearer of 90s superhero cartoons was Batman the Animated Series, first airing in 1992. It introduced dark deco aesthetics and adult storytelling to kids animation. Bruce Timm led the creative vision with a bevy of creative talents in Eric Radomski, Alan Burnett, Gene McCurney, and Paul Dini, along with Shirley Walker's orchestra score and Kevin Conroy's commanding voice as Batman. It broke ground with noir tones and psychological depth. It won multiple Emmys and redefined superhero animation. While I was on the fringes when it came to enjoying movies of Batman 89 and Batman Returns, the animated series hit the nail on the head for me, with Batman as a towering, disciplined, peak human force, armed to the teeth with combat skills and razor-sharp detective skills. It had a great supporting group of characters in Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.'s Alfred, Bob Hastings' Commissioner Gordon, and Lauren Lester's Robin. Standing at the villain forefront is Mark Hamill as the Joker, with other formidable villains such as Harley Quinn, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Two-Face, Penguin, and Ra's al Ghul. The animation was simplistic yet fluid in its execution. Just a masterpiece. And because Bruce Timm and his team had proved themselves with Batman, they say, well, give Superman a shot. With the series that ran from 1996 through 2000 under Warner Brothers Animation. But, it was developed as a spiritual follow-up to Batman, the animated series, and offered a more optimistic and sci-fi tone. Though it had less acclaim than Batman, its character-driven arcs, especially with Darkseid and Lex Luthor, those were praised. The visual style aligned with Timm's universe, came alive with his visionary design. Budget constraints did mean less moody lighting than Batman. Tim Daly proved to be a noble and resolute Superman, with Dana Delaney as an outstanding Lois Lane. The team behind the cartoon knew perfectly how to make Metropolis the perfect futuristic city in antithesis to Batman's Noorish Gotham. Clancy Brown voiced an intimidating Lex Luthor, leading the Rogues Gallery that included Metallo, Brainiac, Parasite, Toyman, Livewire, and Darkseid. They found ways to make things challenging for the Man of Steel, not quite as strong as most were accustomed to, like in Super Friends, and the physics would often fail him, giving him unique challenges by comparison. But thankfully, Bruce Timm and company didn't stop there. One season after Superman's debut, They brought a redesigned Batman, still voiced by Kevin Conroy, brought him back for additional episodes, and quenched our thirst for a world's finest team-up. It worked in that it, like the comics, broke away from the Batman and Superman being uber chummy. And while I don't share Frank Miller's opinion on that relationship,
these two people would not like each other. They just wouldn't.
I think it works best when they clash in their ideologies but respect each other's strengths and goals. Their initial encounter is beautifully tense. I don't think the weaponized robots were handled very well. Also, the Superman, Clark, Bruce, and Lois love trapezoid was kind of weak, but I loved how the villains crossed over with the heroes and how the ideological clashes between Batman and Superman did effectively explore what each character was all about. And we're still not done with which is often referred to as the Timverse for DC. You got Batman Beyond, ran from 1999 through 2001, but Bruce Timm and company they decided that they could go one more with a legacy series and created an entirely original futuristic Gotham with Terry McGinnis as Batman, because Bruce Wayne had hung up the cowl 20 years previous. The show became a surprise critical hit, combining cyberpunk aesthetics with emotional arcs about legacy and aging. Its darker themes and visual style earned strong acclaim and cult status. They made it work with the Joker's cult, as well as segues from classical villains from the original animated series with Bane, Ra's al Ghul, and Mr. Freeze. I remember feeling a little uneasy because I was in the middle of formulating Sledge's character and his power set and criminal backstory, and seeing similarities in Terry McGinnis' Batman. But thankfully, none of Sledge's exposure has made people say to me, "You copy Batman Beyond." Just about every streaming service will give you access to the Timverse, so there you go. But yeah, that's the 90s. That had lots of good, had some bad, and some experimentations that proved worthwhile. And that's my take on that. But agree, disagree, or something I left out, please let me know in the comment section. The link to order the Sledge comic book miniseries is in the link below in both digital and paper format. Give it a look. Let's all look for civility amid any bad news out there about social and political strife. Let's not hate. Let's find friends wherever we may go. Let's see everybody we encounter as a potential friend. Everyone be safe, and God bless.